Well, welcome again, everybody. For those that were here last week, welcome back. For those that are just joining for the first time, I'm Laura. I'm the founder of Front Office Rocks. And we are going to jump into the schedule tonight because, time is great, but when the schedule runs us, it feels like we don't have enough time. But before we got started, I just thought that this was a great way to start the evening. So I would love to see you guys in the chat answer this question. If the most valuable currency in the world was time, how would you spend it? If you if we were trading time, if we only had time, what would you do with the time that you have? And I'm gonna start with that because we're gonna get into like the basic dental and nitty-gritty stuff, but I would love to know what you guys think about where your value is or who you would spend more time with or what you would do if time was currency. So just throw it in the chat there. Then I can make sure you're actually paying attention too. Uh-huh. Travel and exercise. Me too, actually. I love to travel, not so much the exercise part, but it'd be good for us to do. All right. Enjoy my family. Yep. Spend time outside. And don't quote me on who the book is, but I've heard a lot of people talk about this, there's a book about somebody who interviewed a bunch of people as they were in their final days about, what do you regret? What do you wish you had more time to do? And nobody said work. Nobody said spend more time at the office. However, it feels like we do spend more time at the office than we do with our families or in our cabin or outside like we want to. So, what I'm going to jump into tonight is we're going to talk about the actual dental schedule because last week we talked about what was the priority of our time. Now it's the schedule because we know in a dental office, the schedule runs us. And then next week, we're going to talk about time management because first we have to understand how to run the schedule proactively so that we're in control of the schedule because we all can agree here probably that the reason we don't have as much time as we want to do these things is because the schedule runs us. But then when we do find time in the schedule, when we do actually start running the schedule well, then there is self-control, self-management on your own time management skills, which we'll get into next week. So tonight is going to be Dental 101. So if you were with me last week and you were like, we didn't get enough into the nitty gritty, guess what? We're getting into it tonight because so many people I talk to, as I go around the country and speak and train, have never truly been taught how to build a productive schedule. They understand the concepts of it. They saw a speaker talk about it in the past, but most offices and people who run the schedule are doing it just because that's what the last person told them to do. They're just kind of putting together what the doctor wants them to put together. And in order for us to be in control of the schedule, we've got to understand how to build a productive schedule. So I'm going to go back to the basics of how to put together a productive schedule that is you can be proactive to control because we're not going to find any time in our day if we don't have a schedule that runs well. So I just want to ask you guys, and you don't have to put this in the chat. Maybe you can just give me an emoji, a yay, totally our office, whatever. But I just want to know what schedule problems and issues you guys have in your office. Anybody in here have cancellation and no-show issues? Everybody probably has cancellations and no-show issues. Everybody in here probably had somebody who canceled or no-showed this week. In fact, you'd probably be happy if only one person canceled or no-showed this week. Needing more new patients, right? We are trying to fill the schedule and do this, and we just need more new patients, more new patients, more new patients. And we focus so much on the front door. We talked about this last week, where you forget about the back door. Or how about this? Treatment plans getting phased. So the doctor tells the patient they need 3 crowns. The patient says, yeah, doc, that sounds great. And then they walk up front to the front desk employees and the team members up front, and they say, I'll do 1 crown this year, 1 crown next year, and 1 crown the year after. Or patients saying they have no money, right? They show up in their new, Audi. They just got back from a trip to Europe. They're holding the latest iPhone and the Starbucks coffee, and then they're telling us they don't have any money. Or how about front office not getting along with back office? Hygienists not getting along with dental assistants? Team against doctor? Do we have drama in our offices? I don't know. I'm in California. We have a lot of it in California. I'm sure it's across the country. Or how about the doctor wanting more production, right? The doctor's mood is on squeeze it in, more production, throw it in, and they're happier when we're busy. But like we learned last week, busy doesn't necessarily mean effective. Where do we put emergencies? We always have emergencies. We're always running behind. The patients are running behind. See, we all have scheduling issues. They're different based off of every office. They're different based off of every day or hour of the week, but scheduling issues come up all the time. And because these things happen all the time, we can put together this pie in the sky idea of what a perfect schedule is, but we know that all of these things come up and they're going to mess our schedules up, right? So, again, for those that weren't here last week, I'm just going to quickly go over this. This is the foundation of everything that I talk about. And I went in depth into it last week. But what we need to realize is that we ultimately, yes, we're dental offices, but at the end of the day, we're small businesses. And a small business has a cycle about it. A small business has certain aspects that we all play a part in. We've got to market our business. We've got to give our patients an amazing experience. We've got to sell them on the dentistry they need. We've got to produce quality dentistry so they'll go tell their family and friends to come to our practice. We have to make sure that our patients are coming in every 3, 4, or 6 months for their recare appointments. And when they fall off the bandwagon, we've got to bring them back in because we know who our patients are. So when we look at this small business cycle, and again, go back and watch the recording from last week if you want more in depth about this. But when we look at this, the area where schedule falls is production. It's patient experience, it's production. But really, when it comes to putting together a productive schedule, it's about production. It's about running on time, scheduling the patients for the right amount of time, making sure that the lab cases are in, making sure that we've done, reactivation calls, making sure all of that is for production and the experience of our patient when they're in our practice. And so when we really start getting in here, we really have to start to say, how much do we run full control on that, right? How much do we feel like this is truly an area that we feel like we have control over? My question to you is, what's the only thing, and actually I'm gonna put this in the chat. I want you guys to tell me in the chat, what is the only thing that you can predict about your schedule each morning? So if you come in the morning and you have your schedule printed out and you sit down in the huddle and you look at the schedule for the day, what's the only thing that you can predict about that day? And it's consistent across the board for all of us. Is that day going to run? Right? It will end eventually. I love it. You can predict lunch, but we can't predict what time lunch is. Sometimes lunch is at 4 in the afternoon, right? But we can predict it will end, hopefully, if we don't die at work, right? If we hope we finish on time. But really, all we can predict is it's not going to run that way, right? Oh, how many days of the year does the schedule actually run the way we have it printed when we walk in the morning? Very few days. So when we understand that, we can look at it now and say, let's stop being reactive to the schedule. Let's not being surprised. Let's stop acting surprised. Like, oh my gosh, there's an emergency. Oh my gosh, somebody canceled. Oh my gosh, patient doesn't want to pay their bill. Oh my, like, we know these things are going to happen. So let's proactively get in charge of our schedule so that we can adapt and fix things as they happen. Make sure the patients that are in the schedule show up so that we can work on time, like you say, get our jobs done and make sure that we're hitting our goals every day. So if you've ever learned from scheduling, I'm not the only person who talks about this. I've been learning this since Linda Miles way back in the day. I'm sure there's somebody on here who knows Linda Miles, Lois Banto. Like there's been people before me and now speaking on block scheduling. Some people call it profitability scheduling. Some people call it proactive scheduling. Some people call it primary block scheduling. It doesn't matter. The whole thing is to understand that it's about building a schedule that makes sense, that is productive, and that you can be in control of. And I am not going to, I'm just telling you right now, I'm not going to give you, here's how your schedule should run. By the end of this, you're not going to have like, here's Laura's best practices of scheduling, because every office runs different, right? Your office is going to run different than my office. The office across the street is going to run different. You have two doctors. I have three doctors. You're in the country. We're in the city. You have one dental assistant and do assisted hygiene. We have three dental assistants and run two chairs. Like every office is different. So what we need to do is we need to learn the foundations of what a productive schedule is and then apply it to our practice. Okay. So take off your dental hat for a minute and put on your business hat, like we talked about last week. Scheduling for production is a system. Businesses run on systems. Businesses run on, we fill the positions within a business, but the business ultimately should have positions and systems. And this is how people flow through your business with these systems. And then people on your team fill the positions. The schedule is a system. It's an organized, purposeful structure that consists of interrelated and interdepartmental elements. So, it's a system from the moment the patient calls to when we schedule them, to when they arrive, to when they do their paperwork, when they see the hygienist, when they see the doctor, when they get their next appointment, how they pay their bills, and out they go. The thing that makes the schedule so important of a system for us is it affects everybody on our team. See, you might have a system of how your hygiene department does something, or you have a system of how the front office team does something. But with the schedule, it affects all of us. It's all of our departments together. How is your system running? And if I were to ask you, if we were in an audience and I'd say, how great is your schedule? Your office managers would say, we're great. We have it under control. We're amazing. Doctors would go, I don't know. I hope it's good. It's productive. I walk in, sometimes we have holes. And the team would be like, oh my God, it's a mess. They're always, scheduling new or emergencies in, squeezing them in, right? Everybody on your team has a different idea of how your system is running. So is your schedule organized and purposeful? Does everybody realize how much it influences the other people on the team? And what's the goal of your system? Does everybody know what your goal is and how you are doing to schedule to that goal? So I'm going to break this down. I'm a big fan of acronyms because that keeps me on track with the topics that we're going through. So I'm going to start with impacts, and impacts is my acronym. And it starts first with, why does a productive schedule, a block schedule, a proactive schedule, why does it matter? I always start with why when I talk about anything that I train on. Why it matters is because, one, it's important to the patients and it's important to the team. So let's talk about the patients for a minute. Remember the small business cycle. And I said it's about production, but it's also about patient experience. See, patients don't know if we're a good dentist or not. Remember, they don't look in here and say, look at this great margin. They know how they feel when they're in your practice. So how does it feel if you were a patient in the practice, or if you were a customer, to get told to come in at 2 o'clock because your appointment's at 2 and not get sat till 2:30? How does it feel? How's the experience to get told the appointment's going to take 30 minutes and they're still here for 3 hours? How does it feel as a customer to call and leave a message that you need to schedule an appointment and not get a phone call back for 3 days? How does it feel, right? Do you see where I'm going here? Like, our patients, we ask them to respect our time. We need to understand their time is valuable too. And a reminder that we talked about last week, people don't like to come to the dentist either, or anyway, right? So if we're running behind, or if our schedule's not running well or whatever, we are giving them an excuse not to come. And remember, our job is button the seats. So first, we have to understand it's important to the patients. But secondly, we have to understand it's important to us and the team, right? It is the initial reason for drama in my assessment. I believe that, and I'm assuming, nobody put it in here, but I'm assuming that you guys have a little bit of drama sometimes in your office, that you have a little bit of attitude sometimes in your office. And I believe it always starts with the schedule. Because here's an example of what happens. So, an emergency patient calls in, front office team asks the question, says, okay, we got to get you in for an emergency. They ask the dentist says, squeeze them in over lunch. The front office team does what they're told. They squeeze the emergency in over lunch, and the assistants now are in the back slamming instruments. Oh my gosh, here we go again. We have another emergency over lunch. The hygienists are mad because they know that means the doctor's not going to come do the exam because they're seeing an emergency, so they're going to run late. The front office team's up front going, why is everybody in the back have an attitude? And that's why we have a problem, right? Because again, the schedule runs us and it impacts everyone on the team. So that's why it's so important to us. Like, if we can run a schedule where we're not pointing fingers at each other, but we're understanding there's a system that we're all following, it is the basis of a good day. And it becomes, the way it runs right now, the biggest stress for everyone, right? Running behind, patients waiting, not going to lunch. I mean, somebody said one of the things that, going to lunch, and this is the difference between going to lunch on time and going home on time versus not. And ultimately, don't we normally have happy doctors if we've got productive days? So it's important to the patient and it's important to us. Now, before I get into the actual going through how to build the schedule, the first thing we need to do is become aware of how long things take. So I think I talked about this last week. You can't fix what you're not aware of. And so many times we build schedules that we run behind for various reasons, but one of the reasons is because we're not putting the right appointment length in for the appointments that we have. So before we start jumping in and fixing the schedule, the first thing I want to know is how long are appointments taking for our practice? And so what I suggest is an old school way with note cards and keeping track on note cards of like how long each procedure takes per provider. So what I would suggest is for 2 weeks, keep note cards. On the top of the note cards, you write patient's name, the procedure that we're doing, the time of the appointment, the time they got sat, the time they got released. And if you're doing doctor assistant time, then keeping track of what was doctor time and what was assistant time. So the patient comes in, the note card goes back with the assistant, they keep track of the time, they bring the note card back up front and give it to the front office team. And do this for 2 weeks. And then take the cards and divide them up by procedure, by provider. So I'm going to have Dr. Smith and all his 1 surface fillings, 2 surface fillings, his crowns, his onlays. I'm going to do it per doctor, per provider. Take all of the times that he did that procedure, divide it, add them up, and then divide it by the number of appointments, and you're going to get the average amount of time, right? The reason I want to do that is because I want to know how long it takes for a 1 surface filling versus a 2 surface filling versus a 3 surface filling. And I want to do it for 2 weeks because that's going to give me an average, because in those 2 weeks, you're going to have the one that ran late, the gagger, the one that went perfectly, and we're going to get a good average. I also want to do it per provider because not that I want to compare this doctor is faster than that doctor, but if we do have different doctor times to do procedures, why do we want to make them the same amount of time in the schedule? I'd rather give this doctor the appropriate amount of time and this doctor the appropriate amount of time. We actually had that in our practice. We had 2 owner doctors and 2 associate doctors, and we were a CEREC office. Our owner doctors had been well trained in CEREC, been using it for years. Our associate doctors were new at CEREC, and the amount of time that we were giving our owner doctors was not enough time that we were giving our associate doctors. And so we did the time study and realized that they were running behind regularly on their CEREC procedures. What was causing was stress for them, stress for the assistants, the patients were running behind. And so we really had 2 choices. Either get our associate doctors caught up to the time they train them so they were faster, or let's give them a little bit more time until they get faster so that our schedule can run on time. So the reason I want to do this is before I even put appointments in the schedule, I want to know what's the realistic time those procedures take. Okay. Now I want to get in and play the game. It is a game. The dental office schedule it runs us every day. It's an important system. But if we go in and we don't have fun and we don't look at it as a game, it's going to run us. Okay. So The reason I talk about it as being a game is that we need to know where we're going. When you play a game to win, right? So if we have a game that we're playing, but every day is like this, and tell me that your practice doesn't feel like that sometimes. $2,000 day, $200 day, $4,000 day, $300 day, $3,000, right? Up and down and up and down. What we want to do is we want to set a goal, a score, and then we want to schedule according to that consistently every day so that we can hit our goal. We have hired and trained and are prepared as a team to hit a certain goal every day. So when we do twice that goal, we're killing ourselves, right? We're running around trying to keep up. We got high production, doctor's happy, but we're not giving great service. We're exhausted, right? But if we are significantly lower than our goal, now we got people sitting around like twiddling their thumbs on their phones looking at Instagram. So what we want to do is we want to have consistency. That's going to help us hit our goal. It's also going to help our practice and our team get along better, have more fun at work, right? Okay, so in order to play a game, you've got to have a score. The scores that I think that you should track or talk about on a regular basis is collection, production, new patients, and reactivated patients. So collections, productions, and new patients, that's been, everyone tracks that typically. I've added reactivated patients based off what we talked about last week, that I think there's a backdoor problem and that we need to close our back door. And I think that this should be something we focus on, of how many patients can we get reactivated. Now, the reason that I bring this up at this point is because most offices track at least the first three numbers here on a regular basis, but does your entire team know what those numbers are? See, this isn't just a number for the office manager, the doctor, or the scheduler to know. Everyone on the team should know where these numbers are at any given time so that everybody's part of the game, right? It takes all of us to help make those goals. It takes all of us. It takes the hygienist to be looking for opportunities in their chairs, the assistants looking at the next day's schedule, who are patients that have outstanding treatment. It takes all of us. So everyone on the team should know the score. Okay. Now we got to put the score to breaking it down to bite-sized chunks. Okay. So let's start with a goal in mind. Let's say our goal is 60,000 for the month. And let's say our doctors produce 70% and hygiene produces 30%, or some variation of that. Hygiene should be 20 to 30%. Doctors should be, 70 to 75%. So when we take that and we put it into, we're only open 16 days this month, we divide that goal by 16 days. I now have a daily goal for my doctor of 26.25 a day and my hygienist 11.25 a day. Okay. So now I can take this $60,000 goal and I can come all the way down to every day. I need to make sure that our doctor has around 2,500 or 3,000 in their schedule, and the hygienist has around 1,000 to 1,500. That's not one day the hygienist has 200, the next day they have 3,000. One day the doctor has 200, the next day they have 20,000. It is literally, this is what I want to schedule to every day. So I suggest that you, if you haven't done this or if you haven't done it in a while, is to pause, come back, watch this later, or do this afterwards. But what are your numbers? What are your daily goals? And if you are shut down an extra 2 days, can you reach those goals? Like, divide it by the number of days you're open. And do your team members know the goals? And then going back to that idea of busy versus effective we talked about last week, how do they play a part in reaching these goals? Because the number's not just for the doctor and the office manager, it's for all of us. And we're all part of getting to these daily numbers. Okay. So now we know what the game is, right? We know what the score is. We know if we're on track to reach that score to that game. Now we have to actually build the schedule. And the way we build the schedule first is we put primary appointments in first. Oh, let me back that up. I switched these around. Sorry. Let me go to the game real quick. we've got to make it a game also means that we have to have the right attitude when it comes to the schedule. And the person who has to have the most game player competitive attitude needs to be the scheduler. So in the front office, I can do everything across the front office, answer phones, reactivation, recare, schedule, all the things. What do I love to do the most? The schedule. I love scheduling. I think it's the most fun thing we do in the front. However, let me just clarify that with I am very competitive. If you know me, I'm very competitive. And I love puzzles. I could sit and do puzzles for hours. Well, that's what the schedule is. It is a puzzle that we are fixing and putting together all the time. So everyone on the team needs to understand that the office schedule is always going to change. Stuff's always going to come up. I mean, shoot, it's snowing in Florida right now, right? Who knew? So there's always going to be things that happen, but we need to have somebody who's like, okay, cool, game on. What do I do with this? Where can I move this? What can I do? And how can I make the schedule better? And that is important for the whole team because if the team doesn't understand it's always going to change, whenever there's a cancellation or somebody moved in hygiene or something, they're like, my schedule changed again. Oh, my schedule. Well, that's kind of what it's like. It shouldn't be a lot, but when it happens in a dental office, your attitude makes a big difference. So really making sure that we make it a game. Another thing I'm going to suggest, I actually lead a mastermind for ADOM, and I'm working with office managers on a lot of the different leadership skills that are needed to be a great office manager. And one of the things we're doing in the mastermind is we are going outside of dental to get knowledge and education and training. And so I suggest that you also, as you're training your team, you're looking at ways to enhance and grow yourself and your team as a leader, to get connected with a mastermind or a coach or something, do webinars like this, but also get out of dental. There's a TED talk on grit that we were talking about change and doing things in the practice. And we watched this TED talk on grit, and grit is what a scheduler needs, right? Somebody who's like, I'm not giving up. I'm going to fix this schedule. We don't need somebody who is a people pleaser and super passive and introverted and afraid to pick up the phone. So we want to make sure we have the right people in the right seats on the bus, right? So make sure also that when you're looking at your team, and I'm going to talk about the end training, don't just look at opportunities within dental, look outside. There's great resources, articles, TED Talk, AI. I'm all geeking out on AI right now. If you're an AI interested in it, come find me on Facebook. I've started a group because it's going to be the wave of the next thing for us. So think outside of dental again. Take off your dental hat, put your business hat on. All right. So now back to the productive appointment. Sorry, I kind of did a flip there, but let's talk about productive scheduling. We have primary appointments, secondary appointments, and tertiary appointments. So every doctor appointment can fit into one of these three categories. Primary appointments, anything high dollar value. So that's anything over a certain dollar value. In my practice, it's anything over $1,000. So if it's $1,000 or more, it's considered a primary appointment. And in my practice, we made those appointments green. We had EagleSoft in the practice. We made them green. So you could see primary appointments were the same color as money, right? Dollars. So when you're flipping through the schedule, you can see, if you see a lot of green, you know it's going to be a good day. Secondary appointments are anything low dollar value, but they have a dollar value associated with it. So, fillings, whitening, smaller procedures are secondary appointments. And those were orange in my practice. So if you see a lot of orange, but not a lot of green, we know we need to get primaries in. And then the last appointments are tertiary, and those are that have no dollar value. So adjustments, evals, right? Those have no dollar value. We have to do them, but those were brown because they're the same color as, I'm not going to say it because I don't know where this is going to end up, but you get it, right? We know if it's a lot of brown on that day, it's going to be a crappy day. Okay. So the reason that we want to understand this is that every appointment can fit into every primary, every procedure type. So it's a primary appointment, secondary appointment, or tertiary. It doesn't matter what we're doing. The reason we want to do that is because we want to put our primary appointments in first. Why do we want to put our primary appointments in first? Because remember, if in our example, our daily goal was 26.25. Well, let's say on average, my primary appointment's $1,200. I want to put two primary appointments in and I've hit my daily goal for the day. I mean, I'm at 2,400. I'm going to make it up with the other things, but it only takes two primary appointments to hit my goal. If I did secondary appointments, let's say they're average of 300, it's going to take 8 secondary appointments. 8 times I have to turn over the room. 8 times patients can cancel. 8 times, right? And if I fill the day with tertiary, I'm never going to hit my goal. So I want to put the primary appointments in first because typically they'll help us hit our numbers, but also they're usually bigger appointments. Not always, but they're usually larger appointments. And many times when we don't have places for the primary appointments, the big appointments, we book them out too far. And when we book them out too far, our patients cancel. Our patients have other things that come up. Their tooth stop hurting. They find another dentist, whatever. So we want to get our primary appointments in now. Plus, our primary appointments typically are the ones that are the bigger need for our patients, right? These are the ones that are going to be a root canal soon, or they're going to lose their tooth soon, or we're going to try to save their tooth with a crown or whatever. It's usually not, people aren't going to usually lose their tooth over a one surface filling. So having primary appointments as the ones we're looking for and that we're scheduling is good for the patient and it's good for us. Okay. Next, we want to block for these primary appointments. So for those following along on my letters, add blocks. For some reason, my slides flipped around a little bit. So next thing we want to do is add blocks. We want to block the schedule to 70 to 75% of our daily goal. So in the example of 26.25, we need 2 appointments, and our blocks were 2 hours long or an hour and a half long. So you need 2 blocks in the doctor's schedule every day. And then we're going to add those blocks because that would be 70, 75% of the goal. And I want to block that in the schedule every day. And I want to add those blocks so that they don't get filled with the little appointments that aren't going to help us hit our goal, and keep those spots there for the primary appointments. I want to add blocks for spots and for the primary appointments, and also for any other procedures that are hard to get into our schedule. So if new patients are hard to get in, start blocking for new patients. If perio patients are hard to get in, start blocking for perio patients. If you're not having your schedule because the schedule's no, if you're not having your meetings because the schedule's always full, start blocking your calendar for meetings. Because we tend to just fill our calendars with everything else, and the primaries are the most important things for our calendar. So you want to make sure that we add blocks, okay? Now, a lot of you work with softwares that have perfect day scheduling and all these great little things, that you can see how appointments should be built, but they're so easy to schedule over. When you see, like, here's where everything should go, but I walk up as an assistant or a new employee and I schedule an appointment, it just goes right over that little, this is a perfect day schedule. So the reason I say add blocks or add events or add whatever your software calls them, it's to hold the spot so that nothing else can be scheduled at that point unless I move it. And I want to do that because everybody on the team typically plays in the schedule at one time or another. They try to help out, they move an appointment, they schedule something for a patient, they answer the phone. And that's how our schedule becomes a mess, because we haven't held the spots that we need to hit our goals. And then we look at the schedule and we're like, wow, this is a mess. Well, what happened? Well, we all did it, right? So I actually want to make sure that I'm holding blocks. So put actual blocks in there, because the PMS, it's too easy to ignore it when we schedule right over the perfect day scheduling. Okay. So we got to know how long appointments take. We've got to make sure we have the right attitude about it, and we know what the score is. We've got to determine what are the most important appointments in the schedule that we need to get in to hit our daily goal. We need to block those times in our schedule. And then we have to continually improve. We can't just walk in the morning, look at the schedule in the huddle and go, man, today sucks. Cool, good luck. I'll see you on the other end, right? We should be looking at the schedule and ways to improve it each and every single day. Okay. So the most important day in the schedule is today. Today is always the most important day. If you walk in the morning and today is not great, it's not perfect, everyone on the team should be working on today. If today looks good, then you focus on tomorrow. If tomorrow looks good, then we focus on the next day. But if we're focused on the next day and today falls apart, what becomes the priority again? Today. Okay. So every time the schedule starts to something moves, something falls out. If it's today, today becomes the priority. This is the focus. If today and tomorrow looks good, we're working a couple days out. Okay. The other thing is that the team should always be focused on today, tomorrow, and the next day. That's it. The scheduler, the actual scheduler, and you should have one person or two people who run the schedule. I say two people because we had a doctor scheduler and a hygiene scheduler. But it shouldn't be seven people who run the schedule. We can all help with the schedule, but somebody has to be held accountable to it, right? So the scheduler should be looking out next month, 3 months, 6 months to make sure things are filling in the way they're supposed to make sure blocks are held where they're supposed to. But really, the whole team should be looking at today, tomorrow, and the next day. And when something falls apart, go back and fix it. And then don't just be satisfied things are full. Because just because the schedule's full doesn't mean we're going to hit our goals, right? Just because the schedule is, there's no openings in it and we're double booked and everything, that's how we end up running around like chickens with our heads cut off and then going, oh my gosh, we only produced how much? So it's kind of like being busy versus being effective. We need to have numbers and goals and know that the appointments in the schedule are the ones that are going to get us to our goals. Next, we want to train anyone that schedules. Okay, and I don't know if yep, I do. Okay. Next, we want to train anyone that schedules. I want to make sure I didn't miss this part with you guys. So when we hire new employees, when we cross-train employees, when we have people helping out in the front and vice versa, many times we just, here's what you do, here's what you say, go. And we don't understand why our system, like our schedule, isn't running well and why it's a mess. It's because we haven't trained the employees how to say how to say the verbal skills needed to get the patient to do what we want. An example of this outside of schedule is there's a little bit of a difference of when a patient walks up and says, your balance is $500. Did you want to take care of that today? The question is not did you, it's how do you, right? When the patient walks up and we say, okay, you need to schedule your crown. Did you want to schedule that? We already talked about this. We put drills and needles in our patients' mouths. Nobody wants to schedule the appointments, right? I get it for free and I don't want to schedule it. So don't ask them if they want to schedule it. Let's find out when they want to schedule it. So the things that we say and how we say it matters. But many times we take team members and we don't train them well on the schedule. And I'm not trying to make everybody on your team be the scheduler because we have people and actually at Front Office Rocks, I have like a full course from beginning to end on how to become a great scheduler specific for schedulers. But we do need the entire team to know how to offer appointments. We do need the entire team to understand the basics of what I'm going over tonight, because we all dabble in the schedule. Okay. So when it comes to offering appointments, before I go through the verbal skills or the way to do it, let me say a couple things. First of all, I'm not a fan of scripts. I don't think scripts work. I don't think if I have a piece of paper and I'm reading off of a piece of paper, blah, 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 to a person, they know when you're reading a script. However, I am a fan of training your team members and role playing with them, because trying to get our patients to schedule is just as difficult as trying to get our patients to pay. People don't want to pay for dentistry. People don't want to show up for their appointments. And if your team members aren't confident in the way they say things, if they're not confident in their ability to talk a patient through scheduling an appointment, you're going to have a lot of patients leaving without their next appointment, which then is going to cause your backdoor problem because we let the patient leave, they don't have their appointment, and now we got to track them down for the next 12 or 18 months. Okay. So it's important to make sure that our team members are trained. The second thing before we get into this is that when we go to offer appointments now, understanding primary, secondary, and tertiary, we now want to offer the appointments that work best for us in the schedule. So if I'm looking at the schedule and this patient's a primary appointment in front of me, and I already have two primary appointments tomorrow and Thursday, I'm not going to offer an appointment tomorrow, Thursday. I'm going to offer Friday where there's no primary appointments. So how and when we offer the appointments depends on how great we like how we build our schedule and then the communication that we have with our patients. Okay. Now getting into the specifics, we should never ask a patient, do you want to schedule? Because they're going to say no, right? We never want to ask our patients, when do you want to schedule? Because they're going to say never, right? So or they're going to say Friday at 5 o'clock or Saturday, and everybody wants those times. So what we want to do is we want to say something to the patient that asks them, with the assumption they are scheduling, ask them for a day of the week or time of day that they prefer. Ask them for, what are you looking for? Mondays, Tuesdays? Are you looking for mornings? Do you have certain dates next week? Like, let's get them to narrow down for us their preferred times. And then I'm going to offer two times that fit in that window. So, or try to offer two times that fit in that window. So let's say they like mornings. Cool. I have an appointment Tuesday at 10 or Thursday at 9, which is better for you. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to control the offerings based off of what's best for our schedule that also fits for our patients. When I ask the patient, just if I were to ask them, when do you want to schedule your appointment? They're going to start this laundry list of how about Thursday? I don't have Thursday. How about Tuesday at 9? We don't have one at 9. How about this? And we're going to go back and forth and it's going to be exhausting. What I'd rather do is say I have this time or this time. Now, another disclaimer on this. If my opening is Tuesday at 10, let's say I have an 8 to 10 appointment and then a 10 to 12 appointment for primaries. And so I offer this patient 10 o'clock and they say, well, I can't do 10. Can you do 10:30? Okay. Technically, I can do 10:30. Technically, because there's no appointment here. It's a 2-hour block. It's supposed to start up. I want to butt it up against the appointment above it. Technically, I can offer him 10:30, but I don't have a 10:30 appointment because I need to butt these appointments up back to back because I don't want a 30-minute gap. That's how we end up with gaps all over our schedule and look like Swiss cheese, right? So when a patient says, but can I come at 10:30? I'm sorry, we don't have a 10:30. You can come at 10 or you can come at 2 or you can come at 10 or you can come on Thursday at 9, right? We have to realize that this is our schedule. And like I think I talked about last week, like they got to play with our rules inside our four walls. And for those of you who understand, like there are certain companies, businesses we go to that you're going to bend over backwards to show up for their appointments. Anybody, your hairdresser, your getting your nails done. But we tend to be very flexible and very casual in the dental office. We have to stop being that way. We can be nice, but we have to remember this is our schedule that we're offering their appointments into. And then lastly, we need to have a scheduling policy. And scheduling policy, that's the S for anyone who's keeping notes. A scheduling policy is not one that you and I are going to write today because you have different things going on in your business and your practice than I do. What's important though is that you and your team are on the same page. Because like I said earlier, the schedule is the number one reason we have drama and issues in our office because we have a lot of, well, I don't know, she scheduled the appointment. Well, I don't know, she told me to put the appointment in. He said I should, right? What we need to do is we need to get the whole team together and write a scheduling policy that we all can agree to. And then that way we can point to the scheduling policy to say, well, why did you schedule that emergency over lunch? Because here's what it's written on the policy. This is an agreement we all agreed to in this scheduling policy. It doesn't matter if you and I agree on how to handle something. What matters is that you and your team and your dentist agree on how to handle something. So that's why you need to write a scheduling policy. So these are not ones that you should take and put them on the wall and say those are your policies, but these are just some examples of ones that we had in our office. So we wanted 75% of our goal scheduled by lunch. So we wanted to make sure that by lunch, by the afternoon, we were hopefully coasting, and that was our everyday goal. We were going to attempt to put primary appointments in the morning. We wanted to do the primary ones in the morning so the afternoon could be more gravy. We want to schedule the earliest opening and then schedule sequentially. So try to do the 8 o'clock, then the 10 o'clock. Never book small appointments in the middle of large appointments. Only focus on the next few days. If you do have to book out a few weeks for whatever reason, let the patient know that if something comes open sooner, that you will call them. So really going through with your team and make a list of all the things that are go wrong in your schedule. Doctor runs behind, patient runs behind, runs late, patient runs late, and then what? Patient runs in 10 minutes late and then has to go to the bathroom. Patient, just brings us a new insurance card. Doctor changes treatment, like all of the things that happen. Make a list, hand pieces break, whatever, and then make a plan of how to handle them in your practice. And there's no right or wrong answer, like patient running late. Should you see them or not? Depends on your office, but you guys need to be on the same page of what do we do when a patient runs late? Because there's nothing worse than a patient running 10 minutes late. They finally show up, and now we spend 10 minutes trying to figure out if we're going to see them or not. Like your practice, your team should be on the same page. Okay. So I recommend the way you go from reactive to proactive is that you do this, you get your team together, you sit down and go through every scenario that comes up in your practice. Then you talk about what we should do as a team. This isn't a like pointing fingers thing. This is a going forward. Here's the issues we have. How should we handle them? And then make it a policy and hang it on the wall. And now everybody follows it. Main point I want to say here, because I know I have a lot of doctors on this call, everyone follows it. So doctors, that means you follow it. For example, if the policy is no emergencies scheduled over lunch, then that doesn't mean you turn around and start scheduling emergencies over lunch, because if you're not following your own policy, your team's not going to follow it either. Team members listening to this, that being said, there's always an exception to every rule, and the doctor gets the override. So if there's a true emergency and we've got to stay a little late or we've got to see a patient over lunch, we're their healthcare providers. We're here to support our patients and take care of them. But it just means that we can't be doing it all the time because we've got to be on the same page as a team. Okay. I know I have a lot of doctors on this call, so I'm going to throw in my little thing about morning huddles, because I know a lot of offices who are not doing morning huddles or they're not doing them correctly. The reason we need to have morning huddles is because we every single day need to come in and be on the same page. We need to know what we're doing as a team. Okay. And I love this picture. My son actually is tomorrow he's doing his first solo flight. He's going to be, knock on wood, he's going to be a pilot. And we talked about this recently about every single time as a pilot, they have a checklist and they go around and do the same thing every time, because there is a time when a pilot is going to get very rote in like, oh, I know how to do this. I've done this before, and they're going to miss a step. They're going to miss something. And we need to, yes, we can know everything about our patients and everything about the schedule, but there's a collaboration and a need to come together to talk about how are we going to do our day? How are we going to do the dance together? And what do our patients need? And how do we rely on each other? And that's really what the huddle is. But you got to have rules around the huddle. Everybody needs to show up on time. Everybody needs to come with their part. We're not just coming in to talk about production. I can look at the schedule for production. I want to know, did the patient refer anyone? Do they have an outstanding balance? Do they have treatment still to do? Did they go to the specialist? Is the lab case here? What's the next thing we need to talk to them about? We need to run it talking about all the important things, and we need to run it the same way every day. Because it needs to be in, out, we're efficient. This is not a time that we come in and we're eating our oatmeal and we're talking about what we watched on TV last night. We need to have everybody who brings their part to the huddle ready to go. This, again, is not the office manager who's reading through the schedule for everyone. We can do that ourselves. We need the hygienists coming in with their patient information. We need the dental assistants coming in with the production information for the day. We need the financial coordinator talking about financial things. This is how we get to become a high-performing team that we talked about last week versus just a bunch of people who work under one roof. So you can have it as rudimentary as this is my We had a piece of paper that was laminated and we just followed the piece of paper all the way over to, and this is probably an old version of their, but Dental Intel has a morning huddle for, dashboard that you can go to. I know there's a lot of companies now that have the software to show you exactly what you need to go over every morning in the huddle, but it's got to be the same way every time. And everybody in your team needs to understand how they play a part in this, that we're here to focus, that we're don't wait till the end to ask all your 10 questions. Make sure you're on time, get involved, and don't be Debbie Downer. Don't be the one who's going to be like, that won't work, right? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop an amazing team. So we can develop a system that we run, that we can go home on time, that we can have lunch on time, that we don't have drama in our practice, and that we can fully take care of our patients. But another thing that I would say is that we also need to develop our team members. We need to realize that just because we hire somebody, that doesn't mean they understand how to do things right all the time, specific skill sets. And the good thing is we can learn how to do things. Like this is me with a bike. I have a long story about the bike I'm not going to go into now, but I started at 50 years old road cycling. Now, I know how to ride a bike. I've been riding a bike since I was 7, but I don't know how to ride that bike. And the first 2 times I was on the bike, I did nice old headers off the front of the bike because this skill set is higher than just riding a bike when I'm 7. So if you are looking for your team and your practice to go to that next level, you can't just show them a 1-hour webinar and say, now go, right? We need to actually train and work with our teams on verbal skills and scheduling skills and how to get, learn from mistakes and get better at things and how to get our patients to show up and how to answer the phones because we've got to learn new skills and continue to grow and improve, right? We want to continue to grow and improve. So there are dentists out there who say, yeah, but Laura, what if I train my team and they quit? Or what if I train my team and somebody on my team and they leave? Well, I love this quote from Henry Ford about the only thing worse than training your employees and having them leave is not training them and having them stay. I would rather invest in training my team members and have them do well for however long they're here with me than not invest in the biggest part of my practice, which is my team, and expect them to do things that nobody's ever taught them to do. And right now, our current training in dental offices, we throw them to the wolves. This is, here you go, here's your phones, here's the schedule, here's the insurance that we belong to, go. And here, Susie's going to show you how to do it. Well, not everybody on your team is, just because they're good at what they do doesn't make them a good trainer, right? So we need to look at our training program the way it is now and actually block for training, actually invest in our team, actually allow them to sit down and learn how to do some of these things that we want them to do from their own perspective, from their own insight. Because so many times we just have people like, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's like the peanuts teacher, wah, 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 wah. What I need someone, and hopefully tonight you guys are getting some aha, some thought where you're like, oh, right? I talked about that last week. We want our team to go, oh, I never thought about it that way. Or, oh, I could try that tomorrow, right? So you got to block time for training. Front Office Rocks has been around for, it's hard for me to say this, but 15, 20 years now, 15 years, I guess. And I know that this happens all the time where doctors will say, I bought Front Office Rocks, but my team won't do it. Well, they don't have enough time to go to the bathroom. We've got to make sure that we're scheduling time to train. So you've got to find it, either do it on off time, do it on Fridays, do some in the morning huddles, do it first thing in the morning or when they come in from lunch. Do it over a team meeting or reach out to my team and they'll help you learn how to implement training in your practice. Because we have to realize that it's our schedule. We run it. We want to be clear. We want to be firm. We want to be friendly. But if we're going to take control of ourselves in our practice, we've got to be in control of the schedule. And next week, now that we've got the schedule running well, I'm hoping then you'll come back to join me and I'm going to talk about running you well, time management skills that you can look at for yourself because now you have a break in your day to do something. Are you managing your time very well? So Here's the QR code if you'd like to have the PowerPoints for tonight. I'll give a QR code in a minute for our offer for Front Office Rocks, but I hope tonight was a good foundational training. If you've been through something like this before, it's a good reminder of how to build a productive schedule that you're in charge of.